Hey everybody, this is Perch. I've got an email from a viewer here. It's titled "Women's Appeal in Comics Impossible," and it's from a writer, Hose Mad. So I feel okay with. I don't think I'm revealing any secrets. But where is this mail going to go? You know what? Surprisingly, not where you think. You put those two together, you think you're going to get something. By the way, if you want to see Hose Mad, what is the obsession with pumpkin spice? I don't get it. It doesn't taste particularly. I mean, it tastes fine. It's flavor, but I see people like there's a Starbucks here who did a brief test of pumpkin spice latte early, and people, I arrived at the Starbucks as this little test, this little trial run was over. It's like a half an hour little run, and people were pissed off, like just angry, rabidly angry that they couldn't get it. I wait all year for this. It's like you do. You have a pathetic, shallow life. I don't know. At the same time, I've now heard just in this day. It's fairly early. It's like 6:30 in the morning, and I've heard 4 reports that Oreo is bringing back pumpkin spice Oreos, and everybody's like, "Oh my god! Oh my god! I got to get to the store. These things are going to sell out." Like, okay, clearly we are not in a bad recession, and nobody is worried about gas prices and other things. If you are getting erect and horny over pumpkin spice Oreos, the world is not as screwed up as people make it out to be. That's the only conclusion I can draw. If you anyway, so let's get to this mail. It says, "Hey, Perch. Why don't the big two make targeted content, or sorry, content targeted directly at quote girl markets? I personally am an enjoyer of mini comics. I collect omnibuses, classic runs, weekly buy, the current runs, and it's great. Even comics I dislike, I can appreciate and see who would like them, but I can't help but notice there's not many modern comics that are meant to appeal to the girly demographic. When I was a kid in the 2000s, my papa would take us to the comic store and we'd pick out books. I wanted to like comics so bad, but ended up gravitating to manga because of the pink frilly dresses, elaborate powers, over the gritty, practical fashion that Marvel had going. There's a big, interesting clue in what you just said, by the way. Magical manga girls seem more interesting to me than a Katniss Everdeen Hawkeye from a design personality standpoint. I wore makeup and all pink, they did too. They were bubbly and often had varied hobbies without being masculine or boy crazy. Uh, Here's an interesting kind of side effect of manga. There are certainly some boy crazy characters out there, but by and large, if you notice, the more common thing is that the men are crazy. It's the men who are having like the crazy nosebleeds when they see like a bare shoulder. Just an interesting kind of little difference, little cultural difference. Anyway. To add to this, sorry, back to the mail. Manga also had female villains who were conventionally attractive and did not get redeemed or made into anti-heroes, something that, as a small child, I found cool. Of course, shows like Teen Titans managed to catch my attention for similar reasons, Starfire, Blackfire, Raven, but I never saw enough bleed back in style to make me want to read them. I know many real people who love practical fashion and tomboy character types like Captain Marvel who exist to be strong, rough women. However, the lack of over-the-top feminine women who are non-romantic characters has always rubbed me the wrong way. I'm not asking for characters who fight with magical lipstick and wear lingerie, though I'd read every issue of that. More so variety in design and personality that I personally haven't been able to find in anything past the 80s. Am I just an outlier? This is an interesting mail because on a bunch of different points, I think it hits on some stuff, but I'm drawn to one line here, and it's this one. I would let's see, I would read every issue of that. Okay, it's not part of that part, but more so variety in design and personality that I personally haven't been able to find in anything. So here's a theory that I have, and just kind of keep in mind I've been reading comics forever, looking at comics forever. I believe there was a fairly decent variety in costumes and characters and personalities through the 70s through the 80s. And I think we took kind of a step backward in the 90s. I think the 90s kind of narrowed. If you think about like a wide horizontal range of personality traits and costumes and other things, in the 90s, it went leather, pouches, and it was kind of more this gritty, it was, as we've talked about before, it's kind of the wrong lessons learned from Alan Moore. It was just that's what kind of happened to the comics at that point. To the point that I remember, different books. Certainly, Warren or not Warren Ellis, Garth Ennis did in the Boys, but you saw it in Doom Patrol as well. They started making fun of kind of the pouch, kind of gritty, dark comics, and it was fine to make fun of it. But if you look at it, there's just a narrowing of the variety of costumes and personality types. And then in the 2000s, we were talked about, we were told there would be a big renaissance. Hey, we're getting out of the 90s, we're doing different things. But I don't think that the variety of costumes and personalities and everything actually increased. I think it shifted. I think it's still a fairly narrow set. And if you look at comics today, if you look at Marvel and DC, and if you just thumb through a bunch of them, you'll see a very kind of small range of personality types, of costumes, of everything. I mean, it's I think everything has narrowed, and I think in many ways people point to the '90s as being kind of all the same thing, but I think the 2000s, in addition to kind of shifting, I think it further subtracted personality types, and I think in the teens, the last decade we've lived through, I think it's shifted even further. Both what I think happened in the last 10 years is, in addition to kind of the costuming and the kind of personality shifting, the dialogue reduced as well. A lot of people started doing that Joss Whedon Bendis knockoff dialogue, and it just in general, I think the industry has subtracted, not added. That's my theory, and I think it holds up based on, if you look at the comics, they're not targeting a wide audience, or rather, maybe that's not even the right way to look at it. Maybe it's not the audience of readers. Maybe it's just the audience of their own IP and their own characters. There's less variety now. And I also think that you see a huge desire or influence of, when something hits, immediately it's pushed to the very top, and you see several knockoffs like within months. But I mean, I think there's something really going on here in this mail. I do think the draw into manga is interesting, because I do think if you've been reading American comics for a long kind of length of time, and then you suddenly start to pick up manga, one of the things you notice right away is an abrupt left turn of styles and personalities. I mean, and by left turn, I mean just it's jarring, because suddenly you have very different archetypes to the characters. And what's strange, I've talked about My Hero Academia on here before, and so for whatever reason, that manga is, I don't know, disliked by manga fans. Like, oh, that's not. I don't know. I don't quite get the My Hero Academia hate that goes on. But regardless of whether you like the series or dislike the series, if you look at the class, the class Midori is in, the main focus of the book, you see people with wildly different powers. Now, some of them are completely useless. Guy who shoots tape out of his arms, what do you really do with that? Now, they've tried to find a way. It's like, oh, he can handle this. There's a lot of kind of nonsense in the characters, but the costumes are as variety as you can possibly get. They're all over the place in colors and style. It's a complete, almost blast to the senses. And the characters themselves, even though you do have some of the kind of standard manga tropes, you have very, very different behavior, very, very different, activities going on. It's just you get a bigger variety. It's a bigger set. I do think, kind of going back up to the top, why don't the big publishers make content appeal to women? They should, or the girly crowd, if you want to call it that. I think they absolutely should. I think that right now the publishers have gotten themselves into this weird state where, if they, if they were to do that, they'd be accused of being sexist. It would be, comics have to be for everyone. You can't be saying these are comics for girls. That's misogyny. You get all the labels immediately applied to that. But what's curious is the comic companies are completely comfortable making a very narrow set of comics that clearly do not appeal to everyone. And in a world where they're putting out 80, 90 books a month, there's more than enough room to do that, to do all of these different things. Would it sell? In the current direct market, probably not, or it wouldn't sell well. But if comics has any hope or any desire of expanding beyond the direct market and getting into the newsstand again or getting into different places, they're going to have to start tackling that stuff. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. They have to start appealing to different audiences. That's the only way they're going to get to bigger distribution. I mean, not the only. There's a lot of things they will need to do. It's not just that, but they can't go out with the current content, which is extremely limited in what it produces. I mean, it's funny you wrote this because my daughter, my younger daughter, loves Babysitter Club as these little graphic novels, and one of the things she mentions is I asked her kind of jokingly, do you like these books more than the MCU? And I knew that she would say yes, but I didn't. If you've been selling comics your entire life, it's when you hear it out loud, it's still hard to digest that. But she's yes. But her reason given was there's lots of different types of girls. What she's referring to is inside the book. There's several different personality types, certainly several different ethnicities, but there's the characters have unique, distinct personalities. And her comment was all the characters in the MCU are the same. And she said it in a more cutesy kid way, and not as a. This isn't one of those. My 5-year-old came in and said, "What is? I'm really troubled by the socioeconomic dynamics of Taiwan and what we need of China." Anyway, no. Her comment was basically that the MCU characters are all the same. Everybody is the same. And in her Babysitter Club book, which is clearly written for a younger audience and far more simple than so IP that has like 70 years of content to draw from. Not so. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. It's something to think about. Yeah, very good. Not what you expected from the headline. Thanks for listening.